Good evening, demonic minds of the interwebs. I'm Alexa, the resident ooky spooky girly, and today we're diving into some possession stories that are bound to scare the tar out of anyone, or at the very least give you nightmares. Let me know in the comments if you have any good stories of your own, and welcome to the top 5 demonic possessions scarier than the nun. Number 5, the black lace veil. Now while I obviously love the idea of a cute gothy aesthetic, this is anything but. After one of their public lectures, Ed Warren was conversing with a couple that had been in the audience, where the boy introduced himself as Alan and explained that he'd brought his girlfriend Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she'd been overtaken by some sort of occult influence. Which, hey, that sounds like my mom talking about me. He explained that when his girlfriend became angry, her features would change into something resembling a wolf, and then the voice of a different person would speak from inside of her. When Lorraine walked over to join the group, Ed's wife, Lonnie experienced an episode of instantaneous possession and lurched out in an attempt to attack Lorraine. This incident terrified everyone in the vicinity, with the Warrens ending the audience chat session immediately before Ed escorted the couple to an offstage room while Lorraine stayed outside to, get everybody out of there. In the backstage room, the girl was fully under possession, breathing heavily, and her facial features had transformed into the wolf-like appearance the boy was talking about. Now, after about 10 minutes, the possession did pass, and Lonnie was lucid enough to explain dealing with memory loss, along with losing hours and days of her life over the last 3 months, which is a symptom that's pretty common in cases of possession. She went on to share her background, that she was a girl wealthy enough to buy whatever she wanted, but money can't always buy love. Originally, her now boyfriend Alan had refused all of her advances and bribery attempts at becoming hers, so she had resorted to visiting a store prominent in selling tools to help with witchcraft, purchasing there a book on the black arts, and later that night performing a ritual for acquiring lovers. This ritual involved, you guessed it, the black lace veil, on top of which she placed a crown of goat horns for renouncing God in her baptism along with swearing allegiance to Satan, finishing the ritual by washing down the vow with a cup of animal life force. Easy stuff. We've all got that in our homes, right? Just me? About a month after Lonnie performed the ritual, Alan began paying her the attention she craved, making her entitled world perfect. What she hadn't counted on, however, was that she was now in debt to the demonic, having given them permission to enter her life. Ed knew immediately that Lonnie would have to undergo an exorcism as soon as possible, and made contact with the priest the next morning, who was able to come assist with the procedure. Upon arrival, the priest insisted on testing the spirit, which, it makes sense, so he instructed Lonnie to close her eyes and slowly count to 20, while his assistant stood behind her and placed a cross 6 inches behind her head. The entity possessing the girl suddenly went wild, screaming, "Take it away, it burns, take it away." During the exorcism, it kept screaming, she's mine, her soul is mine," in reference to, Lonnie. Now, it was eventually separated from Lonnie, but just before it departed, the thing vowed it would return to another. The Warrens brought the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and conjuring book home with them, so Lonnie would be safe from repossession, but the tale of the veil doesn't end here. Oh, I love a good rhyme. Ed received a phone call one day from a man named John Rand, who wanted him to meet his daughter Charlene, who he explained possessed a natural knowledge of what he took to be witchcraft. When she stared at people, even when they weren't aware of it, she'd fill their mind with inhuman terror. Honestly, I support this skill. John called Ed specifically because Charlene was manifesting different personalities, some male, some female, and some that couldn't even be called human, but all of them were making extremely threatening statements to John and his wife. Upon bringing Charlene to visit various doctors and clergymen, they recommended John be put in contact with Ed Warren, and Ed agreed to have the girl and her father visit his home the next weekend. Now, when Ed attempted to shake Charlene's hand upon meeting her, she backed away and stared distrustfully at him, keeping track of every move he made. His attempts to question her resulted in no-end answers, and her eyes began to wander around the room in boredom. When they landed on the black veil, though, Charlene jumped up, grabbed the veil, and clutched it to her chest. Her features immediately began to transform into those of a wild, sneering creature, distinct from this otherwise, beautiful girl. Ed drew 2 vials of water to himself, one unblessed, the other blessed by an exorcist, and moved away from what was no longer Charlene, but some sort of inhuman spirit, a lesser devil of hell. A lesser devil of hell. Horrid moaning and various animal sounds came from the girl as Ed blessed her, banishing the demon away for a now second time. The items have thankfully been locked away in the museum ever since. Number 4, the case of Anneliese Michel. She grew up practicing Christianity in Bavaria, West Germany, back in the 1960s, where she attended Mass twice a week. We love the dedication. Now, when Anneliese was only 16, she suddenly blacked out at school and began walking around in what her friends and family described as a trance-like state, and she herself was unable to recall any of it. A year later, she experienced a similar occurrence where she woke up in a trance after her body went through a series of convulsions, causing it to shake uncontrollably. After this, Anneliese visited a neurologist who diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a disorder that causes seizures, loss of memory, and, experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations. After her diagnoses, Anneliese began taking medication for her epilepsy and enrolled in university. Now, if that medication was successful, I wouldn't be talking about it right now, would I? The medication she was given failed to help her, and as the year progressed, her condition got way worse. She began to see the face of the devil wherever she went, and constantly heard demons whispering in her ears. When she heard the demons telling her she was damned and would rot in hell while she was praying, she concluded that the devil himself must be possessing her. Anneliese sought out priests to help her with her demonic possession, but all the clergy she approached rejected her request, saying that she should seek medical help and that they would need the permission of a bishop to do anything. So at this point, Anneliese's state had become extreme. With the knowledge that she was possessed consuming her, she constantly ripped the clothes off her body, compulsively performed up to 400 squats a day, crawled under a table, and barked like a dog for 2 days. She also ate spiders and coal, bit the head off a dead bird, and licked her own fluids from the floor. Yeah, I'm totally not queasy. Why do you ask? Finally, she and her mother found a priest, Ernst Alt, who believed in her possession, stating that she didn't look like an epileptic. If I'm taking this with a grain of salt, I'd like to know what his definition of an epileptic looks like. But Anneliese wrote to the priest saying, "I am nothing, everything about me is vanity. What should I do? I have to improve. Please pray for me. I want to suffer for other people, but this is so cruel." Now, Ernst petitioned the local bishop, Bishop Joseph Stangl, who eventually approved the request and granted local priest Arnold Renz the permission to perform an exorcism, but ordered that it be carried out in total secrecy. Okay, being granted an exorcism in the 70s was like winning a lottery. They were very rarely granted due to the sensationalism caused by the release of The Exorcist movie, and the Catholic Church was determined to protect your reputation at the time. Reputation on exorcisms at the time, okay? Over the next 10 months, following the bishop's approval of this exorcism, Ernst and Arnold conducted 67 acts. We're talking like lasting up to 4 hours per session on the poor woman. Absolutely heinous. Throughout these sessions, Anneliese revealed that she was possessed by 6 demons, Lucifer, Cain, and Nero, amongst others. All these spirits would jostle for control of Anneliese's body and would communicate from her mouth with a low growl. The demons constantly argued with each other, with one being quoted as saying, "People are stupid as pigs. They think it's all over after death, it goes on," and another replying that the first was nothing but a big mouth who had no real say in hell. Throughout these sessions and exorcisms, Anneliese would frequently talk about dying to make up for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. She broke the bones and ripped the tendons in her knees from continually kneeling in prayer, and I just felt that statement in my own ballet-worn knees. Ouch! Over these 10 months, Anneliese was frequently restrained so the priests can conduct exorcism rites. She slowly stopped eating and eventually passed from malnutrition and dehydration on July 1st of 1976 at only 23 years old. Number 3, Michael Taylor. So back in the 1970s, Michael Taylor was largely an ordinary figure in the town of Ossett, Yorkshire. He, his wife Christine, 5 descendants, and their pet poodle lived peaceful and happy lives. And now to pop that little Stepford Wives bubble. In 1974, Christine stated to a Christian fellowship group, to which they both belonged, that his relationship with the leader of the group, Marie Robinson, was carnal in nature. Michael admitted that he felt evil within him and eventually attacked Marie verbally, who screamed back at him. Marie stated that his eyes began to change to something bestial, and that he began to speak in tongues. Now, Michael had no memory of the event, something all too common in cases of possession. During the next meeting, he received an absolution, but his behavior continued to become more erratic. As a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in deliverance and preparation to cast out the demons residing within the man. The exorcism, which occurred between the 5th and 6th of October of 1974 at St. Thomas's Church in Gobber, was led by Father Peter Vincent, the Anglican priest of St. Thomas's, and was aided by a Methodist clergyman, the Reverend Raymond Smith. Now, over the next 8 hours, Michael would repeatedly have crucifixes stuffed inside of his mouth while being doused with holy water. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, the exorcist believed that they had, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. In the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that there were at least like 3 demons still kicking around in his body. While at home, Taylor brutally ended his wife, Christine, by attacking her with his bare hands, tearing her eyes and tongue out, and almost tearing her face off. Completely naked in the street and covered in her red fluids. At his trial in March, Taylor was acquitted on the grounds of insanity. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years, and then spent another 2 years in a secure ward in Bradford before being released. Number 2, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, before I talk about this exact crime, we have to explain how it came to be. This tale starts with David Glatzel, the young brother of Arne Cheyenne Johnson's fiancée, who was living with the couple. Now, strange happenings first began in the summer, when David would jolt awake in the middle of the night, sobbing in fear after being visited by a hideous creature that he described as a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. The beastly apparition had issued a warning. Beware. Very quickly, the visions amplified, with David's beast now haunting him during the daytime. Each time this youngling experienced a visitation, deep scratches would appear on the front door of the family's home, and red marks would appear on David's body. Everyone in the household believed the boy's claims, and according to his sister Debbie, it was out of character for him to lie, describing how he never liked anything spooky, like not even scary comic books. Increasingly worried for young David, a priest was summoned to bless the house, but that accomplished a big, fat nothing. The possession had escalated to such heights that the family were taking shifts to monitor the boy during the night. Eventually, the involvement of paranormal investigators, some of my favorite people to discuss, Ed and Lorraine Warren, was begged for, and luckily for the family, they were available. With her strong powers of clairvoyance, Lorraine described encountering a black misty form during her first meeting with David, knowing immediately she and Ed were dealing with something of a negative nature. Lorraine has stated that over the course of several visits, David made numerous references to death and, impaling. In an attempt to save David from his endless tormentors, Arn taunted the demons during exorcisms to enter his body and leave the boy alone. And what do you know? That challenge was accepted. Look, I'm all for saving young folks, but there's a limit. You don't want to actually invite demons into your body. But hey, many months after that fateful day, Arn's fiance reported that he would go into a trance, where he would growl and say he saw the beast and later would have no memory of it. It was 6 months later, on the 16th of February in 1981, shortly after 6 p.m., that Arn brutally attacked his landlord, stabbing him in a frenzy as he growled like a beast while Debbie watched, unable to react. And the landlord passed away later that evening. Arn pleaded not guilty to the ending charge, with his defense being the demonic entity which inhabited his body had caused him to do it. Number 1. John Jenkin. In the summer of 2013, 25-year-old John from Cumbria, England, expressed fears that he would kill his mother. While in his deranged state, he approached a random van driver, put his hands in the air in a surrender motion, and cried out, "I am armed, but it's not in my hands." Desperate to avoid committing such an atrocity, John tried to end his life by downing a cocktail of whiskey, painkillers, LSD, and attempting to end himself in a river. He was discovered later that day, unstable and smeared with his own red fluid after, self-inflicting. After these events, John was admitted to a psychiatric hospital where staff judged him as low risk and released him. I'm no expert, but I'd hate to see high risk if that's considered minimal. Later that evening, he confessed to a group of friends that he was possessed by demons. "I am the devil, I need to confess." He said his mother had become aggressive and controlling after the events of that day, and that same night his sister Katie had confided in one of her own friends that she was really worried about her brother, saying that he didn't seem like her brother and he didn't look like him anymore. The next morning, after a brutal argument with his mother and sister, he went downstairs and hit his mother with lots of blows to her head with the sharp end of an axe, and when his sister came downstairs, he attacked her as well to stop her from screaming. I guess the sister was sadly right to be worried. After the killings, John was found stark naked, crouched behind a bench, acting erratically. When a police officer asked him if he had taken anything, he replied, "Lives." Now, a court has since sentenced him to a minimum of only 12 years in prison, if you can believe it. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I don't think I'm sleeping anymore tonight. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more demonic content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.